Welcome everybody to Chapter 3 of MCAT General Biology. Today's about embryogenesis and development. So yesterday it took really long. We did reproduction the entire duration of the class, and I wanted to do embryogenesis yesterday as well because they literally carry forward, right? Reproduction is all about the production of sperm and egg and then them coming together. And that's it, right? That's all we talked about. But embryogenesis is what happens next, right? How does the embryo or the zygote, we call it, how does it develop? So, really quick, right? Just to refresh on yesterday, we had an egg, and the sperm, they come here, it's that. You have the sperm coming like this, okay? And once again, the sperm has technically four components to it, right? This is the head, which has the nucleus. This is the midpiece, which contains the mitochondria for energy, right? And don't forget that the sperm, they use fructose instead of glucose for energy. And then this is like the flagella or the tail. But this fourth part right here, this part that I shaded in, this is called the acrosome, right? The acrosome is really important because it contains the enzymes or the digestive enzymes that allow it to penetrate the egg. I just drew an egg, but what does the egg actually look like? Strawberry. Here's the egg, right? Outside of it is this, you can call it a membrane type thing called the zona pellucida. And then there's also like this layer of these cells around it, okay? And this outer layer of cells is called the corona radiata. Corona, you can think of it like a crown, right? So it's like a crown surrounding the entire egg. And so this is like really hard to get to, right? It's like a layer of cells, and then you have this extra membrane there. And so the hold on. This is really bad. Okay, I'm gonna just give up on the microphone and speak louder, okay? So this acrosome of the sperm is going to, once again, it contains the digestive enzymes and is going to be able to actually penetrate through the egg, okay? And it reaches the actual egg or the ovum, right? And so we all know that, you have a bunch of sperm racing to, attach to the egg. But we can only have one sperm, right? That's called like the sperm that wins, right? The winner sperm. So what's gonna happen to prevent polyspermy? Poly means multiple, and spermy is like, sperm, right? So what prevents polyspermy? What prevents multiple sperms from like fertilizing the egg? So they're called blocks to polyspermy. So like something that blocks polyspermy. The first one that occurs is called the fast block to, I'm gonna put PS, okay? Polyspermy. As soon as the sperm makes contact with the actual egg, look, the inside of the egg has a membrane potential of -70 millivolts. As soon as this makes contact, you're gonna have these extracellular sodium cations. We're gonna call it influx, okay? You're gonna have a sodium influx into the egg. And what this is gonna do is gonna basically increase the membrane potential of the egg from -70 to +10 millivolts. Now this is called the fast block because this just occurs fast, okay? It's not really like stable, like you don't want this to be the only thing that occurs because at some point your membrane potential is going to become back to negative. But this happens initially, right? So that the slow block can actually occur. So here we have the slow block to polyspermy. Now I didn't even elaborate on this. What does this whole membrane potential stuff do? What's the point of it? So the sperm can only attach or like make contact with an egg if the egg has a negative membrane potential. I don't know the whole reason why, but that's just the situation. So when it becomes positively charged, the membrane potential, it doesn't matter if a sperm somehow makes it through, it's not gonna actually do anything to the egg. It's not gonna inject its like DNA into it, right? So anyways, this thing occurs initially so that the slow block can occur. We call the slow block the cortical reaction. Whenever I see like cortical, I think of calcium. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but like I just see like the C and somehow make the connection with calcium. But this is all about calcium, okay? What organelle contains calcium, or like what stores calcium? Anybody remember? I talked about this in chapter 1. It's not working. So the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is the one that contains the calcium, right? It's a calcium storage. And then we talked about, sarcoplasmic reticulum. That's going to be in the musculoskeletal system chapter. But the sarcoplasmic reticulum is the one that contains calcium, and it's just a version of the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, right? And so, anyways, right, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is going to release calcium. And what this is going to do is it's going to kind of like come out, and okay, but at this point, this whole corona and zona is like all gone. It's gonna form like this extra like cortical granule layer. And this is a slow process, right? Once this forms, the egg is now like fully impenetrable, okay? So remember, the sperm made contact with the egg. It went through this whole zona pellucida and the corona radiata. And initially we had this fast block to polyspermy, which was the membrane potential changing. And why is that important once again? Because the sperm has to make sure that the egg is negatively charged, or have a negative membrane potential for it to actually do anything. And then this will last for like a little bit while this slow block is developing. And then when it eventually makes like this extra layer that's impenetrable, it's good, right? And then the egg will have like its normal negative 70 millivolts membrane potential. So anyways, right, when the sperm connects to the egg, we call this nucleus technically a pronucleus, right? Because this nucleus contains like 23 chromosomes, and the egg also has 23 chromosomes. So 2 pronuclei come together and form you're gonna have like a zygote, right, which is now 2N, and you have like a proper nucleus. And then don't forget, the egg contributes everything, like the cytosol, organelles, and all of that. Whereas the sperm will just contribute half of the DNA, or 23 of the chromosomes, and then the egg will have the other 23 chromosomes, right? So this whole thing was called fertilization, okay? And fertilization, where does this occur? I showed my mom my drawing of a uterus yesterday, and she was mad serious, and then she started dying when she saw this. I don't see the issue with it, you know what I'm saying? But basically, this is the fallopian tube, right? Both of them are fallopian tubes, or oviducts. We'll call it fallopian/oviducts. And the widest part of the fallopian tube, okay, this is like the widest part. This is called the ampulla. This is where fertilization occurs, okay? So your egg is just chilling there, and then the sperm will come in, fertilize it there, okay? And then this next step of the embryogenetic process I'm gonna talk about will also continue here. And that next part involves the development of a morula. So here we have our single zygote, right? Single cell. And then it's just gonna keep like dividing, right? You're gonna have like a 2-cell, 4-cell stage, 8-cell stage, all of this stuff, right? And it's gonna end up going to like the 16th or the 32-cell stage. So I'm gonna draw like a bunch of like a big cluster. Each of these little cells, like you can consider them blastomeres, right? And then this collective like accumulation of all these like blastomeres is going to be called the morula. And an important thing to know about the morula is that it's just going to be a solid mass of cells, okay? Like it's not hollow, it's just like a big mass. Like, there's nothing inside other than the cells, right? It's just a big clump of cells. And it's important to know that because the next one will actually be hollow, right? So this morula stage is still in the ampulla of the fallopian tubes. But then number 3 is called a blastula. So at this point, your cell, or whatever, your accumulation of cells is going to open up, and you're gonna have like this open cavity filled with a liquid called blastocele. Okay, and then there's 2 like types of cells in this. We're gonna have like the peripheral cells. I'm gonna draw them in purple, and then I'm gonna draw the inner ones in black. And I'll explain, what these are, but this blastula is going to actually be implanted now in the endometrium. And then from here on, it's going to develop for the rest of the cycle in the endometrium. So this outer, or like periphery cells, we're gonna call them, they are called the trophoblast. And then the black ones that are inside, they're just called the inner cell mass. So this is obvious, right? They're inner, so they're called the inner cell mass. The other one, which is the peripheral ones, are the trophoblast. The trophoblast is what's going to develop into the chorion and placenta. So placenta, I'm sure all of you guys know, it's like the organ that facilitates exchange of like waste and nutrients between the fetus and the mother. And then a chorion, it's like an outer membrane. I know we deal with a bunch of membranes, but it's like an outer membrane of this structure thing right here. And then it's going to kind of facilitate the connection of the fetus to the placenta so that it can actually do the whole nutrient waste exchange. And then look, your inner cell mass, this is going to just develop into the actual organism. So everything else, right? All right, that's number 3. Now, number 4 is our gastrula. So gastrula, sometimes it's called a 3-layer gastrula. So I'm gonna put 3 layers. Why is it called 3-layer gastrula? What does this involve? Anybody know the germ layers?
Ectoderm.
Yeah, that's one of them, okay? So gastrula is gonna involve the derms, right? We have ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. There's also like mesendoderm and all that stuff, but the only ones you need to know are ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Okay. So think about it like this, right? Endo is like inner, okay? Meso is middle, and ecto, I don't know what ecto means, but it's just the opposite of endo, so it's probably gonna mean like outer, okay? So this is the inner stuff, middle stuff, and outer stuff. So there's like a mnemonic that people use for ectoderm. They call it the attractoderm. So I'm just gonna write that. Attractoderm. Because this is going to refer to the things that are, I guess, attractive, right? Things that people actually see. You don't see someone's kidneys, or you don't see someone's lungs. You see that their hair, their eyes, their skin, all of that stuff. So they're like technically attractive, right? People get attracted to the stuff they can see. And so your ectoderm is gonna involve those type of organs and things, right? So like, let's write skin, hair, even like eyes. Also like your nervous system, right? Like the central nervous system, like your brain, spine, a lot of the neurons. Okay. And there's one more. It's gonna be the adrenal medulla. I'm writing this in red because I consider it an exception. I'll come back to this one. No worries. Now, mesoderm, I see the M and I think of MSK, right? Like musculoskeletal system. So like, this is gonna involve your muscles, right? We have like smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle. This is gonna be like, circulatory system. So like, heart, blood vessels, bones. Bones are part of the musculoskeletal system. So it's mainly those. And then here's another exception thing. I mean, it's not really exception, but like adrenal cortex. Okay, and then you're gonna have most of the urinary, or let's call it excretory system. Excluding the bladder. So like most of the excretory system though, so like kidneys, right? That's part of it, will be mesoderm. Now endoderm is just inner things, right? So you can say like your GI tract. You can say, this one includes the bladder I was talking about. There's like so many to remember. There's lots of exceptions. So I'm gonna do the ones that I remember, okay? You have GI tract, bladder, thyroid, we have the lungs, just rest of the respiratory system, all of those. And here's the thing, okay? So for this adrenal stuff, adrenal deals with like kidneys. And so the kidneys like are part of the mesoderm. The adrenal glands are, here's like your kidney, okay? Adrenal means above the kidney. So here's like your adrenal glands. And there's two parts of it. There's the adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex. And how do I remember which one goes under which? So adrenal medulla has an M and adrenal cortex has a C, but it's flipped. The M will go with the one that has a C, it's ectoderm, and the adrenal cortex, with the one with the C, will go under the one with an M, which is mesoderm.
For mesoderm, there's also like a means of getting around. So whatever you use to like kind of like get around and stuff.
Like your muscles and stuff.
Yeah, probably gonna be included in your mesoderm.
Yeah, that's what I think of. Like, I guess the mnemonic for mesoderm is moveoderm, like things that help you move.
Yeah.
I thought of it as like the MSK oderm, like musculoskeletal system, but same thing, musculoskeletal system allows you to move. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Number 5 is gonna be called neurulation. So this is like where we're starting to form like the nervous system and all that. So okay, so this is how it works. Like your mesoderm is going to give rise to something called a notochord. And then this notochord gives rise to the ectoderm. This is like, I guess you can consider under the Gastrulation stuff, but I'm gonna elaborate on how it relates to neurulation. So I'm gonna draw like a structure right here. So here's your ectoderm, mesoderm, and then your endoderm. Your notochord is gonna fall under this mesoderm, okay? And it's just like a structure that's going to cause folding. We still have these right here, and then there's like gonna be like folds and stuff in this ectoderm, and then we call these neural folds. Basically, the idea is it's like flat like this, and it's gonna be folding into like a tube type shape. Think of like a spinal cord. So this is what I'm trying to show, and it's not like just 2 folds. There's gonna be multiple folds, right? You can even do like that, but we call these neural folds. And so I'm gonna continue this, okay? The ectoderm gives rise to the neural folds. And then the neural folds can do two paths, okay? One, it can become the neural tube. So if I want to continue this drawing, it's gonna make like this tube type thing. You still have like your, it's something like this, right? Think of like a tube being made, like it's really forming that tube. The neural tube inside, this one, like really think of it like a spinal cord. So what is spinal cord under? CNS or PNS? The central nervous system or peripheral nervous system? The spinal cord and brain are the basic like main components of the central nervous system. The only other thing there are like the neurons associated with them. So neural tube is going to give rise to the central nervous system. And then the neural folds, right? It can either become neural tube or it can become or give rise to the neural crest cells. So if neural tube gave rise to the CNS, what is the crest cells going to give rise to? There's only one other option.
PNS.
Yes, the peripheral nervous system. So you can kind of look at this ectoderm and see everything around it up here of the folds. This is like the neural crest cells. They're like peripheral, right? Peripheral nervous system, peripheral cells. But then the actual tube inside, this is the neural tube, which becomes the spinal cord and like the rest of it, right? Brain and all that. I think mainly it's focused on the spinal cord, but we just say CNS, right? Central nervous system for neural tube. Anybody still writing?
I had a question. So for neurulation, you say mesoderm and then notochord and then ectoderm and then the rest. So
yeah,
by that, do you mean like the mesoderm forms first and then it's the because I thought it's like the ectoderm forms first and then it's the endoderm and then it's the mesoderm.
Okay. I don't know the order that things develop. I don't know if that's necessary to know either.
Okay.
But like, what you should know from this is that the notochord is derived from the mesoderm. So the mesoderm was there. And then the notochord,
okay. So by the arrows, you mean like derived from, not necessarily talking about like
not necessarily the order. It's just this led to
okay.
this and this. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave this Blastula here for now. Everybody good with this, by the way? Like, can I erase? Here, I'll start from here. I'm gonna leave the Blastula because when I talk about stem cells, I have to point out something there. There's there's technically three types of like things that cells can do, like in terms of like differentiation and all that. The words we see are differentiation and determination. And there's also one called specification. But they're not all necessarily the same thing. So specification, think of like a cell, it's like deciding like, okay, I'm gonna become like a muscle cell, okay? But it's not like, permanent, it's reversible, okay? This is like a reversible process, specification. So maybe it wants to be a muscle cell and then it changes to being a kidney cell. It's fine because it's not like a strict thing. It's just in the beginning phases of differentiation, okay? So that's specification. Now determination is like a step ahead, okay? This is like irreversible process where now it's determined, okay? If you want to be a muscle cell, like I'm going to become a muscle cell. This is just the act of like committing to something, but you're still not doing it. You're not becoming a muscle cell yet. You're just saying, I will become a muscle cell and I'm not going to become a kidney cell, okay? So this is just a commitment. Now, differentiation is the actual process of becoming the cell, right? So I'm talking about stem cells. Stem cells are things that can become anything. That's like a general, like broad definition for it. But differentiation is like, okay, now I'm going to actually become a muscle cell. So this is the actual process of becoming a cell. And so we hear like the term stem cells a good amount. And yes, the general definition for stem cell is a cell that can just become anything, but that's not necessarily true because there's 3 types of stem cells. So one of the stem cells, or one classification, is called totipotent. And then we have pluripotent and multipotent stem cells. So totipotent stem cells are the things that people think about when they hear stem cells. These can literally become anything. They can differentiate into anything and everything. So I'm put literally anything right here, okay? Now pluripotent, these are close but not necessarily fully there, right? They can become like anything except, does anyone know what it can't become?
Placenta.
Why do you know this, bro? You're smart as hell, bro. So this can become anything except the placenta. And I remember this, like, there's a P here, so pluri and then placenta. But just remember that this is a except, like it cannot become the placenta, but it can be everything else. Toti is like total, like everything, okay? Whereas multi, I'm gonna give a definition, but multi is like a lot, but it's not like total, right? Multi is less than total. The multipotent stem cells, they can only differentiate into a specific category, right? So specific category meaning like, okay, I want to become an immune cell. There's many options, right? T cells, B cells, mast cells, natural killer cells. Those are all immune cells, but it can only become an immune cell. The type it becomes, it doesn't matter, it'll change, whatever. But you can't say I'm gonna be a multipotent immune system cell or immune cell and I'm gonna end up becoming a muscle cell, right? It can only differentiate into a specific category. So if it's going to be an immune cell, it cannot become muscle, kidney, or other categories, okay? So the reason I left this blastula up is because I want you to tell me inner cell mass and trophoblast, okay? Let's talk about the inner cell mass, okay? The inner cell mass, which of these categories of stem cells is the inner cell mass? Think about this right here, right? What does the inner cell mass become? What does the trophoblast become?
The cell mass becomes the multipotent, I think.
You said placenta is multipotent?
No, the cell mass is not multipotent.
The inner cell mass multipotent?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing, right? The inner cell mass, I said it develops into the actual organism, and then the trophoblast becomes a placenta. So that means that the inner cell mass will become literally everything except the placenta. So what category is that? It's going to be pluripotent. So your inner cell mass is going to be pluripotent. What about the trophoblast? What is this? What category? This one can actually become the placenta. So what category is that?
Multi?
You said multi, but why? It can become the placenta. You got an answer? Totipotent? Okay. That's what I would think, right? Because it can become the placenta.
Is it except placenta?
Pluri is except. So this one, the trophoblast becomes.
You said toti, okay.
Yeah. But the answer is actually multipotent. Because yes, this becomes a placenta, but it only becomes a placenta / chorion. It can't become anything else. It can't become a muscle cell or like a heart cell or whatever, right? So this includes the placenta, but it's only going to become that, or the chorion. So this is the trophoblast is multipotent. Okay, so is there back on this? Too much work to erase, so I'm gonna come to this side. the last thing we have for this chapter, it's a little weird because it involves a circulatory system, but like the circulatory system is later on. So like this is talking about an exception to the circulatory system, but why would you talk about an exception if you haven't even talked about the normal thing? It's kind of interesting organization of chapters, but I'm going to give a brief explanation of the pathway of blood in the circulatory system, but I'm not going to be too specific, right? Like we know that heart have valves and all these different things going on. I'm just going to give the general pathway of blood just so I can make a point. And then when we go to the circulatory system chapter, then I'll actually be more in detail, right? So we start with let me write this out. Okay, so this is right atrium. Let me actually draw a heart now. So the heart is like broken up like this. And yes, this is the right side, but we're looking at it as if it's in us, so it's flipped. Okay, this is the right atrium, right ventricle, and then left atrium, left ventricle. So the path is right atrium, right ventricle, and then what is PA?
Pulmonary artery.
Yeah, so pulmonary artery, like this is the blood in the right ventricle is gonna reach the pulmonary artery. It's kind of, here, I don't know where exactly it is, but it's like somewhere right here. It's gonna go like that, and then it reaches the lungs, right? So here's like your lungs. And then from the lungs, it goes to the pulmonary veins, and then it goes to left atrium, left ventricle, and just the other stuff, right? Aorta, biggest artery. Aorta, arteries, arterioles, capillary veins, all that stuff, right? But we're talking right now about, well, this is like a typical circulatory system, but if we're talking about fetal circulation, there's some issues. One is that the fetal lungs, they don't even work. So what is the purpose of the lungs? Is to facilitate gas exchange, right? So in your right atrium, right ventricle, your blood is deoxygenated. So it's gonna go to the lungs so that it can be oxygenated, and then the left atrium or left side is going to pump it to the rest of the body. But the lungs don't work. So do we even want to send blood to the lungs at all?
Mm-mm.
Yes, we do. Okay, we don't want to send blood to the lungs for the purpose of oxygenating the blood, but we still want to send blood to the lungs so that it's there's blood. Like you don't want your lung cells to die, so there needs some circulation there. But here's the thing, okay? You're going to have two things going on. You don't want to send all your blood to lungs. You just want like a little bit just for the purpose of circulation, but you don't want it to all go there. So the right atrium and left atrium, there's going to be a opening, and this is called the foramen ovale. I think foramen means hole. One of these words means hole, okay, or opening. So this opening right here is called a foramen ovale. So the blood from the right atrium, some of it will just leak into the left atrium. That's one way of the left atrium filling up. And why does this need to occur? Because normally you send all the blood to the lungs, and then all the blood from the lungs will come into the left atrium and go on like that. But we're only sending very, very little into the lungs, right? So how is the rest of this blood going to even go here? You need to have some sort of shunt, right? Or opening. So this goes like that. Now, I said that we don't want to send all the blood to the lungs. So here's our pulmonary, let me write it in a different color. Just so you can follow along, this is the pulmonary artery right here. So yeah, we're gonna have some leak into the lungs, but we want to essentially go from the pulmonary artery straight to the aorta, right? Look at this. Instead of lungs, PV, all this stuff, aorta, the blood that leaks into the left atrium from the right atrium will continue this path like aorta and all that. But once again, right, we don't want this to fully go into the lungs. So the blood from this side is also gonna go into the aorta. And how that works is the right ventricle, the blood from there goes into the pulmonary artery. And then we have another shunt. I'm sorry for the drawings, but it's like a connection from the pulmonary artery to the aorta. And this is called the ductus arteriosus. So it's like an arterial duct. So you can draw it like this, right? And then I can't draw this, but like right atrium to left atrium. You know what? Let me draw it, right? Right atrium to left atrium. What is this called again? The opening?
Foramen ovale.
Yeah, foramen ovale. Some put FA.
Foramen.
Yeah, good job. All right. So the lungs cannot oxygenate the blood. So what is this guy going to do? How is this fetus going to get his blood oxygenated? So, so hard to choose colors. Okay. Umbilical cords, right? What is an umbilical cord? What's the purpose of it? What is the purpose of placenta? I mentioned this earlier. Remember the placenta?
To deliver the food from the mother to the baby.
Yeah. So yeah, you can think of the placenta as like a place where the baby will give away its waste, and then in return, the placenta will give nutrients and food, as you mentioned. And then in this case for circulation, we're focusing on the oxygenation part, right? So the venules and then veins. So at the veins, right, there's going to be like a connection to the placenta, and this is just going to be the umbilical artery. And this is sending deoxygenated blood to the placenta. Now the placenta in return, it's going to use the umbilical. Is this too clustered, or like, can y'all read this? Yeah, it should be fine. Okay, so the placenta is gonna, detox, that's a big term right here, detoxify the blood and then oxygenate it. And so now this is going to give oxygenated blood to the, it's technically the vena cava, but like, here's the thing, right? At this point, the placenta, it's technically going to the livers, right? Or the liver to detox, but the liver is also not functioning. So to bypass the liver, once again, we, just like the lungs, we want to circulate blood in the liver so that the liver cells don't die, but we don't want all the blood to go there because the liver is not functioning, and the placenta does all the detox. So there's like a another shunt that's going to basically go from the umbilical vein straight to the vena cava, which is called the ductus what?
Venous.
What's up?
Venous.
Yeah, it's a ductus venosus. Yeah. Was this confusing or pretty simple?
I had a quick question.
Yes.
So you said umbilical vein to the vena cava is the ductus venosus.
Yeah, there's like the thing that allows for the blood to go straight from the vein to the vena cava is the shunt called the ductus venosus. Because without the ductus venosus, it would still circulate to the liver and then make its way to the vena cava. But we don't want all the blood to go to the liver because it's not even functioning. And so this shunt will allow it to go directly to the vena cava, and then we restart the whole thing.
Oh, okay, got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
So normally, the right atrium and the right ventricle deal with deoxygenated blood, and then the left atrium and left ventricle deal with oxygenated blood, right? Because the LA and LV deal with blood that came from the lungs. But now it's a little different. The right atrium and right ventricle also have oxygenated blood, because this is oxygenated blood coming from the placenta, and it goes here. And then as it's going through this whole pathway and then, sending the blood to the rest of the body, then it becomes deoxygenated, and then, the whole thing restarts. But now, right, this is the placenta. What is the placenta dealing with? You're involving the blood of the mother, right? So what is hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is a protein, right, in red blood cells, and like it's just like we read it HB. For adults, it's called HbA, hemoglobin for adults. This is just what carries oxygen, right? But now the blood cells of the fetus are going into the placenta, and they want the oxygen, right? They can't just go there and see that the HbA has oxygen and just come back, right? That's not going to do any good for the fetus. So fetuses have HbF, fetal hemoglobin. It does the same thing, it carries oxygen in the blood, but fetal hemoglobin has a stronger or higher affinity for oxygen, okay? So when the fetal blood cells go into placenta and they're like competing with the adult red blood cells, then these HbF, right, they're going to steal the oxygen and then come here and recirculate. And then when someone is born after like, I don't know, a couple days or something, their HbF just becomes HbA, but you have HbF for a little bit. And then there's some like structural differences, like you don't really have to know them, you'll see them in passages. I think hemoglobin A has like alpha and beta subunits, whereas hemoglobin F has alpha and gamma subunits, if I'm not mistaken. But once again, if anything, this will show up in passages. It's not something you have to know. But you should know that hemoglobin F, or fetal hemoglobin, has a stronger affinity for oxygen, which is how this whole thing works. Any questions? All right, we'll take a 10-minute break. This is it for this chapter. It's pretty chill compared to chapters 1 and 2. So we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll start with Gen Chem. By the way, I'm gonna do